I don't know what movie you and I were seeing. I think it might have been like G.I. Joe or something. But somewhere in the the very end of the movie or like in the credits or something, like just not that you and I sit through credits. So if it was credits, it was just when it just started. But there was someone singing like kapow, blah, 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 blah. And then like 10 minutes later, we're walking to the car in the parking lot. We both like at the same exact time. Must have just like been playing the song in our head over and over again, like the 3 seconds we heard, and been at exactly the same spot because we both went kapow.
I do remember that.
Good times. Do you remember what movie it was?
No.
Bummer.
Welcome back to This Week in Film. It's the weekly podcast where we get together and talk about the movies we've seen over the past 7 days. I'm Nick Panunto, joined as always by Midwest Matt Lauer. Matt, how's it going?
Matt, I am fine. Doing okay, Nick. I think maybe the quarantine's starting to mess with me.
I'm also good. I haven't been on quarantine this week, but I have not been at work all week. My wife was originally supposed to go on a trip this week, and that got canceled due to coronavirus.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of time to watch a lot of movies.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So I have seen...
Oh, God, he's just counting.
6, 7, 8 movies.
Oh, Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. I saw, this won't take very long, 3 movies this week.
Okay, boy.
What'd you see, Nick?
All right. In order, I saw King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, Bloodshot, The Hunt, Spy, Birds of Prey, The Gentleman, Kong Skull Island, and Pacific Rim.
Is this your first time seeing Kong Skull Island?
It was.
Huh. For some reason, I thought you had seen that.
No, because I had watched the second Godzilla movie, which was a disaster.
Oh. Maybe that's what I was doing in my brain. Okay. Well, that's a lot of movies you saw there, Nick. I saw Black Death with Eddie Redmayne and Sean Bean. Wildling with Liv Tyler and nobody else I've ever seen in anything. And also The Hunt.
All right. That'll certainly save us some time.
And I have seen a couple of the movies you've seen, too. So I saw Kong Skull Island, so we'll probably spoil that. Saw Birds of Prey, so I'm going to spoil that.
You've seen Pacific Rim, too, right?
Yes, quite some time ago. Is this your first time seeing Pacific Rim?
No, I've seen it plenty of times.
Oh, okay.
But my son wanted to watch it, so we watched it again.
Gotcha. Oh, man, if I were a kid, I'd be watching that every weekend.
Yeah, that's what we used to do. We used to watch it like once a week. That and Real Steel.
Oh, man, is that the Rock'em Sock'em Robot thing?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I would be watching it, or that Rock'em Sock'em Robot movie, and I couldn't remember what it was, so
yeah,
makes sense.
That movie's great. If you haven't seen Real Steel, it's fantastic.
Is it?
It's great. It's every Rocky movie in one movie.
Except for robots.
Yeah.
So here on Real Steel Corner, we've only got 17 movies to talk about, so we're talking about Real Steel, one we didn't see.
The movie we didn't watch.
Some other week in film. In this movie, when you say it's like Rocky, is it like each person he fights, they're like, okay, now this one fights this way, so you got to prepare for... He's like Clubber Lang, so you got to exhaust him and then fight him. Or
Kinda.
Okay, like a little different strategy
like
for
that.
each one.
Like every robot's a different strategy, and then like Hugh Jackman goes through like this character arc, and there's a kid, and it's quite good. Like it's corny and all, but it's really good.
All right.
I enjoy the hell out of that, and the special effects are top notch.
Well, with the movies that we did see this week, I'm dead sure you're going first. What would you like to start with?
Let's start at the beginning with King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, from 2017, directed by Guy Ritchie and starring Charlie Hunnam, Jude Law, and Djimon Hounsou, who's I guess has to be in every movie I watch now. Eric Bana is also in this movie, a few other people.
Eric Bana?
Yeah.
You mean Eric Bana?
Bana.
Bana. Why are you putting a tilde in there?
I'm Spanish.
Bana.
Eric Bana.
Okay. Okay.
So this movie, like I said, is directed by Guy Ritchie.
I want to be real clear on something. I had no idea this movie existed. When you said King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, I was like, oh, he means that cartoon from back in the day. And then you said Guy Ritchie, and I have this vague notion that maybe people mentioned this at some point. When you said 2017, then I was completely thrown. I do not know what this is.
Yeah, it's not very good. It's not the worst thing. There are some pretty good moments, but as I said, it's directed by Guy Ritchie, and sometimes it feels like it's directed by Guy Ritchie. There are these moments where you're like, this is definitely a Guy Ritchie movie, and this is really good. But then the majority of the movie feels like someone else is directing it. It feels like there are 3 separate directors, and the Guy Ritchie stuff is great, and the not Guy Ritchie stuff is pretty bad, and then the third director is even worse. But basically, the plot of this movie is Eric Bana.
There you go.
is like the king of England, and evil wizards are attacking, and he fights them off because he's got the magic sword Excalibur from The Lady in the Lake. And Jude Law is power hungry, and so he betrays his brother Eric Bana,
There you go.
and then like assumes power over the country. But Bana's son is Charlie Hunnam, who apparently he has to be in every movie I watch anymore. So he grows up on the streets of London or something. You know, he's a real street tough, but he's street smart, blah, blah, blah. And eventually he becomes king of England because of his magic sword.
Like Littlefinger's in this too.
Yeah, that's right.
Does he play a creep?
No, he's a good guy. Which is, out of character. This movie, like I said, it's got a real identity crisis. And I think if it was more Guy Ritchie, it would be much better. And I was reading the internet trivia, and they were like, this was supposed to be part 1 of a 6-part series of films. And that's not happening because no one saw this movie. Because it's not very good. It's crazy long, too. I think it's over 2 hours. Yeah, it's 2:06, but it feels really long. It's got a lot of boring parts. Charlie Hunnam is okay in this movie. He's still doing his Charlie Hunnam thing where he's just, hi, I'm Charlie Hunnam. This is, move his head around, how I talk. And then he does that for 2 hours. But it's okay. I've seen worse movies. It wasn't great. I don't want to see it again, but it's fine.
Is Charlie Hunnam, I'm not sure I've seen anything with him. Is he kind of like a discount actor? Like when you can't get I was going to say Tom Brady. Oh, God. If you can't get Tom Hardy, you get that other guy that seems like Tom Hardy.
No.
Charlie Hunnam is legit?
He's kind of legit. He's in a lot of stuff lately. He was in that Lost City of Z movie I saw a few months back. He was in Triple Frontier. He's in The Gentleman, which I'll talk about later, which is another Guy Ritchie movie. I'm looking at his IMDb. He's in Pacific Rim, which I will also talk about. He's the main guy in Pacific Rim.
Okay, yeah.
And what's really funny about that is the first time I saw Pacific Rim, I didn't really know who Charlie Hunnam was because it's 2013. And I thought he was like a French actor who's like saying all his lines phonetically, and he's just in the movie because he's an attractive guy. But no, he's just like a British guy, and that's just the way he talks because that's how he talks in all of his movies.
All right.
But he's okay. He's actually pretty good in this King Arthur movie. The last thing I saw him in was that Lost City of Z, which was okay. It was pretty boring, and I thought that maybe the acting of the main character was just like the way that the movie was written. But it turns out that's just the way that this Charlie Hunnam guy talks. Like he's just, I'm going to say a few words, breathe, move my head, and then say the rest of my lines. And that's just how he says all of his lines. But by the end of my 14th Charlie Hunnam movie this week, it became quite charming where I was like, this guy's great. I like this guy a lot. So I honestly, I think that's all I have for King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. If you've got nothing to do and you want to watch kind of a stupid King Arthur movie, I would say check it out. It's nothing great or nothing spectacular, but it's kind of stupid fun.
Or check out the guy's whole library and come out of quarantine a Charlie Hunnam fan.
Yeah. All right, I guess I'll move on to the next movie I saw.
All right.
Bloodshot from 2020.
Oof.
Directed by Dave Wilson, starring Vin Diesel, Guy Pearce, I think.
Oh.
A couple other people are in this.
I really like Guy Pearce. I wish he would not choose nothing but terrible movies.
Yeah, I agree. Although the last thing I think I saw Guy Pearce in was Iron Man 3, and I like that movie a lot. So I feel like I can't remember anything else Guy Pearce was in recently. I think he was in that space prison movie that I saw with Lou.
He was in Prometheus, aged up to be like 80 for no reason whatsoever.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I just realized I haven't seen that Alien Covenant movie yet.
Now'd probably be a good time for it.
But speaking of movies I have seen, Bloodshot.
Yeah.
This movie, if you saw the trailer for it, you know everything about it.
Based on a graphic novel.
Yeah, apparently this is supposed to be part one of a whole cinematic universe for Valiant Comics. And Bloodshot's one of their main comic books. I've never read it. But the trailer for this movie spoils every little thing about it. And it's a shame because the twist of this movie is actually pretty good. It's a pretty good twist, but they tell you what it is in the trailer, which is that Vin Diesel, like the whole movie is a lie, and
right,
Vin Diesel
it's all made up.
It's all made up, and Vin Diesel, every time he wakes up, his mind has been erased, and he's basically just an assassin who gets programmed to retaliate against Guy Pearce's enemies, kind of a thing.
So like each time they're like giving him backstory to make him want to kill whoever they want.
Yeah, exactly. Like they kind of just redo the same scenario over and over again, but they reprogram his brain so that the person who tortures and kills his wife is a different person.
So potentially, if I had one of these other, like, hey, Mitch McConnell killed your wife, go take him out. Now, wake back up. All right, Donald Trump killed your wife.
Federal crime, and we're only speaking in hypotheticals that no one should ever do.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that you genetically alter anybody and program them to kill anybody, including politicians.
Oh, good.
So don't do that.
So, but yeah, that's basically it. Like he just gets reprogrammed to kill his enemies, and then that like goes on for like the first half of the movie, and then things go wrong, and then like the movie really begins or whatever. But it's a shame that they have to spoil the twist of the movie in the trailer, because otherwise no one was gonna go see this movie anyway.
Yeah, except for people who are just big Vin Diesel fans. They really didn't need to spoil anything.
Right. And the twist of the movie is the most interesting part, where you're like, oh, everything I have just watched was a lie. And we're doing it again, but it's different. Oh, this is interesting. But because you know everything because of the trailer, you're like, why are you wasting my time with all of this? Mm-hmm. You know, like, and so it's strange because without the trailer, no one would go see it because it looks so generic and bad, but because of the trailer, you're interested, but the trailer ruins everything. So it's like this strange catch-22 where you don't want to go see it unless you know what it's about, but knowing what it's about makes you not want to see it. So it's like, I don't know how to explain it.
No, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, what the dilemma is there. I mean, them spoiling everything didn't get anyone to see it anyway. So I don't know if they're necessarily in the dilemma they think they are. And I'm sure with an action movie that's supposedly got neat things going on in it, you could just show snippets without giving a bunch of context to it, and still there's got to be a way to edit. How long is this movie?
It is 1:49, an hour 49.
Okay, I'm sure you could edit in a couple of the cool action scenes and stuff and still come up with some sort of intriguing trailer.
Now, while I was watching it, the thing I thought of that would have made the movie more interesting is if they went the full Groundhog Day route with it, where they keep redoing the same scenes over and over again, but with different actors saying all the same lines. And like Vin Diesel figures it out that way, where he's like, this is weird. I've done this before, or something like that. But instead, the beginning of the movie, they go through the whole sequence of him basically watching his wife die, and then he wakes up ready to murder, and it goes on. And then like that mission ends and he gets his memory wiped and he has to go through it again. But they do it in a montage sort of thing where you're just kind of like, oh, this would be more interesting if we got to watch it all happen again with different people, where you, as a viewer, you're just kind of like, wait, what's happening? This isn't the same guy that or like they change things subtly in the simulation that they put into his brain. And like if you were like watching it again, you'd be like, what is going on here? I think it would like add a level of confusion to it or something. And it also would make the performance in the movie a little more interesting because Vin Diesel's like acting exactly the same, but the people around him are slightly different. I think that would have made it
really makes me want to watch Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? That's a great point. Just watch Edge of Tomorrow because that's exactly what I'm describing, apparently. You're absolutely right.
That sort of montage, and it, like if you were to put it in a preview thing, makes me think, and I'm sorry because it's a complete tangent, but it's only connected to this montage thing. Did you ever see the movie The Story of Us?
Is that the Bruce Willis?
Yeah.
Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Is that where he like records like he's dying so he makes videos for his kid?
No. I don't think so. I think you're thinking of My Life with Michael Keaton.
Oh, I think you're right.
It's just a relationship movie. It's like, oh yeah, this marriage that's messed up. But the preview for it was this montage set to this like intense classical music, like a Beef It's What's for Dinner, kind of thing. Like there's this like high energy classical music thing going on with this quick cut montage of the family going through all these things like, oh, my hamster died, my dog died, this my first day of school, whatever. And it seems like, wow, I want to see this what's going on with this family. Boy, this is back in the day. I think it was Heather and I went to the movie theater to see it based on this preview, like really intrigued from this montage. And then the montage is just a montage in the movie that's like at the very end of the movie. And we're like, fuck that. Fuck that preview right up its butt. This was a jerk move, movie. You're a jerk.
The other thing about this movie is Vin Diesel's superpowers are very unclear, like super unclear. So his body's basically full of nanobots or whatever, and they power his body, and the more he uses his superpowers, the less power he has. So the movie implies multiple times over the course of the film that he's running low on power. But at no point...
Like each time? Or just like as he goes, like he's degrading the whole time?
Like he gets recharged every time he goes home.
Oh, okay.
And like he only has so much power per thing, but like every time he goes on a mission, he gets shot more, and the more he gets shot, the more power he uses up. But like at no point does he ever get weak or anything. And spoiler alert, I'm going to ruin the ending.
Okay.
So if you don't want to know what the ending of this movie is, skip ahead.
All
but
right,
like the end of this movie, do you want to know what the ending is?
Oh, yeah. No, I was totally kidding. I have no intent to watch this movie.
The end of this movie, there's like this ridiculous fight sequence with him and these two other augmented guys that don't make any sense. And he defeats them, but it like uses up all of his power, and his nanites are down to 0% power.
So
and
it's all Vin Diesel just
exactly
himself.
Well, like if his entire cellular structure is replaced with these tiny robots and he's out of them, he should collapse.
Just be a skeleton.
Or just die, like he should collapse because he's out of power. But instead he just turns into Vin Diesel. And it's just like, there's also this sequence, during the sequence he gets blown up a little bit and all of the color drains from his face and his chest turns red hot like it looks in the poster for it. And you're just kind of like, what is happening? None of this has happened or been explained, and it has no negative effect at all. They try to explain like the nanobots inside him, like if they get used too much they can overheat. And I guess they're trying to imply that he can go like nuclear, but that doesn't come into play at all. It's just there for a visual. I don't want to say gag because it's not a joke, but a thing. And so then he like comes out of this explosion and he's got no color. He's just black and white except for his red chest. And then his buddy on the inside is like, your nanobites are out of power. And then he goes up to Guy Pearce, who has a grenade launcher, and he's just kind of like, it's all me now. And then they explode, and you're like, okay. And you're like, oh, yes, they both explode. Huh. So Vin Diesel is 100% Vin Diesel, and Guy Pearce explodes. And then he wakes up again. Vin Diesel wakes up again in like a trailer somewhere, and his British buddy has put him back together so that there could be a sequel. It's bad. It was really bad.
I would like to see the movie in between the last scene and the one before it, where the guy's picking up all his little body parts and trying to put them back together.
He's got a microscope and he's like, here's a nanobot. Here's a nanobot.
It's just, you think it's a movie about a guy making a puzzle, and then the camera pans back, and you're like, oh, he's been building a body the whole time, and it's Vin Diesel.
God damn it.
He should have stopped.
Find his nose.
Oh, man.
All right, so that's all I got on Bloodshot, I think. All right, so why don't you do one of your movies now?
All right.
Because I have, and then I'll save all the ones that we have both seen for the end. So I've got 2 more movies that you haven't seen.
Okay. Well, the good news here in terms of like having a million movies, but not wanting to make the episode 7 hours long, is that I don't have a ton to say about these movies. So, Black Death. This is a movie that takes place during the plague, and Eddie Redmayne is a monk, and Sean Bean and a handful of other like crusader dudes. Well, they're crusaders more or less. He's going with them. This movie has kind of the vibe of it is somewhere between The 13th Warrior and, if you ever saw that movie with Antonio Banderas based on Eaters of the Dead.
Long time ago.
Yeah. And did you ever see the movie Ravenous, which I think Guy Pearce is
Guy
also
Pearce?
in? Yeah.
I haven't, and I have always wanted to see it. Like, it's just one of those movies I haven't watched.
Oh, yeah.
I've always wanted to.
You should check it out. And both of these movies have a very similar vibe. I guess the plot of this one is a little bit more... Actually, I think Ravenous, too. I think they're, like, looking for specific people that are known to be kind of strange. So yeah, maybe even Eaters of the Dead and Ravenous have some stuff that's... Or not Eaters of the Dead. The 13th Warrior and Ravenous have some stuff sort of in common. But this movie fits into that, like, triad. What these guys are doing is there's been this, like, rumor... There are concerns here and there of like witches and stuff like that. And they've gotten this sort of feedback or this notions come down the line that like there's a necromancer they need to be following. And right now I'm making it sound very like wizardy and stuff, but it's not very fantastical. It's just like dark superstitious times. And there's some sort of heretic who's doing necromantic stuff, and you all need to go hunt him down. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to go on this mission to find this guy. Along the way, it's not a huge journey movie. It's not a very long movie either. They kind of go through these swamps and stuff. They run into some trouble here and there, but when they find a town, they're like, okay, you know what? This town, something here seems a bit strange. And it's got kind of a Wicker Man vibe to it in a way. Like the people are very pleasant and nobody here has been... Seems like the plague just hasn't exactly reached here. There are these little hints here and there of like, yeah, something here is kind of strange though. And you don't exactly know. There are some things about it where you don't exactly know where it's going to be going. But I guess the movie, more than anything, is really about a couple of the characters, like Eddie Redmayne and Sean Bean's characters. There's also, do you know the actor John Lynch?
It sounds familiar, but I can't think of the face.
And he's one of those guys where, for me anyway, it would be the opposite of that, where I'd be like, oh, I know that guy's face, but I've never known who he is. He's in this, and he's really good. He's not either of the main characters, but there's something about this guy that's he's got a very charismatic face. Like, you really get kind of sucked into just really feeling for this guy because of, I think, the expressiveness on his face. And Karina said something that was very similar too. Like, she's like, oh, this guy, I want this guy to be okay. But it's a very simple movie. It's not unpredictable, but you don't really know which direction things are going in here or there. It does kind of raise questions where you're like, wait a minute, who's actually the bad guy here? You know, like, I'm not sure whose side I should be on, because I'm following around these people, but I'm not sure they've got much of a reason to be doing what they're doing. And I'll leave it at that. You know, it's not exactly fun, but I feel that way about Ravenous too, where I was like, this movie isn't exactly fun, but it's kind of like a under the radar, interesting little, got its own kind of strange flavor to it. So it's like, it's one of those things that's if you were to have a meal, that's not a regular meal. You know, it's not like your like Thursday meatloaf type thing, but it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to have that thing that I don't eat that often. I'm going to have that now, like fish. Like, if I have fish, I'm like, yeah, I'm not always wanting fish, and I don't have fish very often. But when I have it, if it's okay, I'm like, yeah, all right. I should do this not more often, but again sometime.
Is this a recent movie? Like, I've never even heard of this.
I think it was 2017.
Oh, okay. I never even heard of that.
Yeah, let me check on this, because I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's pretty recent. Oh, no, I'm wrong. I'm wrong completely. It's 2010.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's like way before Eddie Redmayne went mainstream, right?
Probably, because I think that's before like Les Mis and I don't know.
It's like even before Game of Thrones for Sean Bean, right?
Yeah, well, you know who else is in this too is a woman named Karis Von Houten, and that's actually the Red Lady from Game of Thrones, Melisandre.
Okay. Yeah.
And here's John Lynch. Let me see I can tell you anything he's been in. Wow, he's been in 85 things. And as I scroll through, I'm not seeing anything you'd know. So, yeah, kind of a background dude. Yeah, but I do pretty comfortably recommend checking this out. As I was watching it, I did think, like, this is something that Nick would appreciate. So, check it out. You might not love it, but you'll really appreciate it.
Okay. All right, it sounds cool.
It really does what it's going for.
I like disease movies, so.
There you go.
Speaking of disease movies, it's time for our Contagion real life update.
Oh.
Right now, we're at the point of the movie in Contagion where the riots are going to start happening soon because the ignorant people of the world think that this is still a hoax. And also, they're starting to put together the plans for the wristbands that Matt Damon has to get scanned in order to go inside the mall. So that's coming. So that's your Contagion update for the week.
All right.
Oh, boy. What a time.
Yeah, I saw a picture of some of those protests that was like, here's how frightening it looks to be in, I guess, in a store or something with all these people like protesting at the windows and stuff.
With their assault rifles.
Yeah, pretty disturbing.
Yeah. The next movie that I saw was Spy from 2015, directed by Paul Feig, and it stars Melissa McCarthy, Rose Byrne, Jude Law again.
He's all over the place.
Yep, he sure is. I was sure Digimon Houndzoo was going to show up in this too, because why not?
In
Jason
the background,
Statham,
Guy Pearce.
Jason Statham is in this. There are a few other cameos here and there. Allison Janney is in this.
Oh,
and
I like her.
So this movie was not terrible, but it is about 40 minutes too long.
Oh my, that's a lot of too long.
It is over 2 hours long, and I don't know if somehow the version that I watched was like a director's cut or something, but IMDb says it's 2 hours long, but the version that I watched was over 2 hours. Like, it was 2:10.
That's kind of an average length at this point. There must be, if it seriously felt like it was 40 minutes too long. Well, I don't even know what sort of conclusion to draw from that.
It just feels like, I think this was Paul Feig's follow-up to Bridesmaids.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pre Ghostbusters, but post Bridesmaids. He did Bridesmaids, The Heat, and then some TV movie, and then Spy, and then Ghostbusters. So Bridesmaids was a huge hit, and it's pretty good. I like Bridesmaids.
I never saw it.
It's all right. It's pretty good. It's entertaining. And then this movie is kind of the same. Like, Bridesmaids is supposed to be sort of like a female Hangover, like Hangover for the ladies, whereas the Hangover's for the fellas. And so there's a lot of girl-centric comedy in it, if that makes sense. Like, it's like a comedy for women. Instead of a comedy for men. Like, my sister likes these terrible comedies. And I'm just like, how can you watch this? And she's just like, I like it. It's fun.
Which of your sisters are we talking about?
Lorraine.
Okay.
Yeah, she likes some crazy movies. And this movie is in that genre where recently I've been talking a lot about the Lonely Island guys, or Andy Samberg comedies, or Will Ferrell comedies, where it's like a spoof of a existing genre, which is, I guess, what a spoof is. And this is basically a spoof on like a James Bond or a lesser Jason Bourne kind of thing. So Jude Law is this super secret agent, and Melissa McCarthy is his right hand back home. Like, she's in his earpiece, and she can see everything with her computers, and she tells him...
She's the guy in the chair.
She's the guy in the chair, exactly. Like, she tells him, ooh, you got bad guys coming around the corner, and he's like, thanks. And then he punches them and knocks them out. And they're a great team. And he dies in a disaster. And then she wants revenge, so she goes out in the field for the first time as a secret agent. And oh, the hijinks that ensue. Because it's a Paul Feig movie.
Feige?
No, that's the Marvel guy.
Oh, okay.
Kevin Feige is the
Kevin
Marvel guy.
Feige. Yeah.
I could be saying Feig wrong. Maybe
No,
there's an
you're probably right. I'm confident on the Eric Bana thing. This, not this. You're probably right.
And so because it's now I'm getting my names all confused. Because it's a Paul Feig movie, there is hours upon hours of improv. And the reason that this movie is 8 hours long is all of it's gold. All of it has to stay in. We need all of it.
I understand now how this movie could have and probably should have been an hour and a half, but ended up actually being 40 minutes too. I gotcha. Okay.
And the movie does have some genuine laugh out loud moments. It's got some pretty fun moments. The action's not terrible. And the storyline is... This story is stupid, but like it's a comedy spy movie, so it's passable. But God damn it, it is just too long. If it was 40 minutes shorter, I think I would totally recommend checking it out. Like, it's got a really high IMDb score. It's got a score of 7 on IMDb, which is quite high, especially for a comedy. And I would not disagree with that if it was 40 minutes shorter. It's just so goddamn long. And then, like, it meanders and it drags its feet. And then the improv stuff. Like, I love improv, but, like, you can tell, like, they're just showing the same clip over and over again with different takes. And you're like, okay, none of these are doing it for me. Like, and you could tell they left them in because they're like, oh, this is gold. Leave it all in. And you're like, oh, God. So... in a situation like this, less is more, I would say. But I think that's all I got for Spy.
Okay.
Man, when we have a lot of movies, we really fly through them.
Tearing right through them.
When we got 2 movies, it takes us 3 hours. We got 15 movies.
I think maybe there's a possibility that our minds know ahead of time, like, oh, I'm going to see a lot of movies this week. So they're just not as absorbed in the movie as it's going on. If it was like, no, this is all I'm going to be seeing, it might be a bit more like, all right, I'm going to savor it. And if something doesn't work, I'm really going to take it apart. Right now, you're just like, man, this feels long. Done.
Right. Exactly.
Got it. Oh, man. What's next?
Let's go with one of yours.
I also watched a movie called Wildling. This is a pretty under the radar kind of thing. So Wildling is a movie from 2018. It just popped up in my Netflix feed, and I was like, all right, I'll give it a try, with no idea that there was going to be anyone in it that I actually knew. But a couple people did pop up who were familiar, because Liv Tyler's in this. And do you know who Brad Dourif is?
Sounds familiar. Is that the guy who's Chucky in the
Child's
Play movies?
Yeah. He does the voice of Chucky. He's Grima Wormtongue in The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, man, that's Brad Dourif? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, he's one of those people you think of if you think of some of the X-Files episodes from back in the day that, like, stood out. He wasn't the guy that stretched himself tombs, but I think he was the guy who was like cerulean blue, like would hypnotize people. But anyway, he's in it. And the main actor in this movie is a young lady named Belle Powley, who I thought did a good job, did a good performance. I might be kind of cagey about this movie, and it might be a good idea for me to see here what the description on IMDb is, because, okay, yeah. So the description on Netflix was something along the lines of, this girl is kept in an attic for years, and then when she's rescued by a sheriff, she finds out who the real monster is. And in here it says, a blossoming teenager uncovers the dark secret behind her traumatic childhood. I am going to try not to say much more about the plot than that, because with that sort of setup, that's probably how you should experience this movie. And spoiler alert, I am going to recommend you check it out. It's very under the radar. It feels like a low budget, not in a bad way, but just kind of like maybe someone's passion project, or just kind of like a quiet, small group of people wanted to put this movie together kind of movie. So you follow this girl out from where she was kind of being trapped, and you get to see her learn a little bit about the environment. You know, it's a little bit of a fish out of water kind of thing, but not in a humor way. The good in this movie is probably her performance. I actually think, for the most part, the performances are decent. It's nice to see Liv Tyler, but there are a couple lines that she delivers that are a little bit like, it's kind of like big news that you're giving somebody. It'd be kind of like if I were to say, hey, Nick, this isn't actually part of the movie, but if I were to say to you, hey, Nick, I got some bad news here. Actually, one of your kids isn't your kid. I replaced it. When you were in the hospital, I was going to say getting your child. When you were in the hospital and your wife was delivering a baby and then it went away for a minute and you got another one back, that's not your kid. And I were to just kind of tell you like that without any sort of like, you're really going to need to brace yourself for this. You know, there's a little bit of that in this movie where it's like, it seems like the character would know that this is pretty heavy news.
I'll tell you one thing.
Yeah.
That's a legitimate fear you have when you're at the hospital.
That you'll get someone else's kid?
Uh-huh. Or at least I had that. Every time we were in the hospital, every time they would take the baby away, you're like, are they bringing back the same baby?
Well, it has happened before.
It has, yeah.
Although, I guess, you got a matching set with two of them. So like, the odds of those being somebody else's babies are very low.
No, they're not identical, though. They're
really?
just two randos.
Oh. Huh. I thought they were identical. Oh, my bad. I guess that's some of the bad is the delivery's kind of lame here and there. There are times where basically there are things that this girl has to face because she's lived in an attic all her life. And Liv Tyler, so she ends up kind of living with Liv Tyler temporarily.
Sounds like a reality show.
And it doesn't seem believable even in the movie where it's like, yeah, the sheriff is going to take her. I'm like, I don't think it would work that way. Even if the kid wanted to be with her, I just don't think it would happen. But it does. And there are things that you would know the kid wouldn't know. And Liv Tyler's character seems to just expect her to know stuff. For instance, tampons. She's like, here's some tampons. And even as she's giving it to her, I'm like, you're going to explain that to her, right? And then the girl's like, what are these? And she's like, oh, yeah, I guess I need to explain it. I'm like, how dumb is this sheriff? That's a little bit of a knock on it because it happens a few times throughout the movie. This is definitely one of those movies where you're like, wow, that high school student is definitely 33. Like, just, no. And there's some school bullies that are a bit much and whatnot. It's kind of weird because it's like, this is like a much darker Brigsby Bear kind of thing.
Okay.
Where it's like, oh, people have been playing with this idea of people living in bunkers and gone in some fun whimsy directions. And this is going in a whole different direction. And there's one other weird thing. And it's that there is one shot in this movie. And I want to be clear. The young lady who is this Belle Powley actress. She's a cute kid, not an unattractive girl or anything, but there is one shot in this movie that makes it look like she looks like Mac from Mac and Me. It's like someone's like touching her face. And so like, it's not just that she looks like that thing, but it's just the way it's shot. It's like the angle. And it was weird. And if you've ever seen Mac and Me or clips of it, you'll go, she looks like Mac and Me right there. That's weird. So anyway, I thought that overall this movie was a pretty good little project. If it's from somebody who's made tons of movies, I'd say they probably could have done things a little bit better. But if it's, someone's first, second, third movie that they're directing, they did a pretty good job. And if I knew that it was all the people making another project, I'd be interested in seeing another one. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah. So
right.
Check it out if you get a chance, which you probably will have a chance because we're all in prison.
So
next movie.
The next movie that I watched that you did not is called The Gentleman from 2019. Again, directed by Guy Ritchie. This one stars Matthew McConaughey, Charlie Hunnam.
Again, Charlie Hunnam.
Yep, Colin Farrell is in this. Hugh Grant. This is a huge cast. And this movie was awesome.
Really?
It was fantastic. If you like Guy Ritchie crime movies, then this is for you. Like if you like Snatch or Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, or what was the other one that he did after Snatch? Not Rock and Roller. I didn't like that one.
though.
This feels very much like Snatch for the most part. It's not as stylized as Snatched was. It's a different feel, which is kind of neat that Guy Ritchie makes, like, his movies all feel different, but with the same touch. Well, I guess I didn't see anything after that besides the Sherlock Holmes movies that I like. Oh yeah, he did The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Well, that explains there's a poster of that in one of the movies. And Aladdin. Well, now I got to see Aladdin because I've watched all the other ones. I guess I'm on a Guy Ritchie kick right now. Anyway, this movie was awesome. I loved it. I loved everything about it. It was terrific. Make sure you watch it with captions on because otherwise you don't know what the hell they're saying because it's a lot of Cockney and British accents, but it's fantastic. Matthew McConaughey is superb. Charlie Hunnam's great. Hugh Grant's phenomenal. Colin Farrell's fantastic. It's great. It's basically just crime. Matthew McConaughey has this weed empire that he's trying to sell. He wants to get out of the game, and other people want what he's got to sell. And that's basically the plot of the movie. And it's fantastic. It's told in this very non-linear way, and it's great. I don't really have that much more to say about it until you watch it, but I loved it.
All right. Well, I will.
Yeah. If you like Snatch,
I'm willing to give it a try. I'm not expecting to enjoy it as much as you do, but I did enjoy Snatch. I'm not like completely like anti Guy Ritchie, so I'm willing to give it a try if it's kind of snatchy.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool movie. It's not the best movie, but I was like the whole time I was like, I love this. This is exactly what I wanted right now.
Okay.
So it was everything I wanted from a Guy Ritchie crime movie, which is great. So, I mean, that's as brief of a review as you're going to get, I guess, on this show.
Yeah,
but,
that's true.
After you watch it, we'll probably say a little bit more about it, but like, there's really not a whole lot to the plot. It's just executed extremely well.
Okay.
Do you have another movie, or are we going into spoiler corner?
Yeah, the only other one I saw was The Hunt. So,
all right.
I guess we can go in whatever order you like, good sir.
Oh God, I have 4 more to talk about. All right, well then let's start with Pacific Rim because I think that's the oldest of the movies. Pacific Rim from 2013, directed by.
Is it also the last Charlie Hunnam movie we were talking about?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's directed by Guillermo del Toro. It stars Charlie Hunnam, Idris Elba, Charlie Day. This also has a huge cast. Ron Perlman. Basically, it's robots versus monsters. Giant robots versus giant monsters, and this movie's kick-ass. It's a lot of fun. The plot is stupid as all hell.
Yes.
Doesn't make any sense, and there's a lot of time between monster fights sometimes, but the monster fights are fantastic. It's the best Godzilla movie that there's ever been, as far as the 2 American Godzilla movies. I guess 3 American Godzilla movies. And it's just basically giant monsters fighting robots, and that's as basic as it gets, and it works. It looks fantastic. The acting is pretty good. It's like almost deliberately hokey. That's
true. It is kind of tongue in cheek. Like it's kind of self-aware.
Yeah. Like I said, it's not good acting, but it fits. Like it works. The only thing about it is this movie is over 2 hours. It's 2 hours and 11 minutes. It's too long. It could easily be much shorter.
That's my biggest complaint. I walked away from this movie going like, I liked how the action scenes played out, but I got no interest in seeing this again because it was drawn. It's kind of like Avatar, where I'm like, there was something about that I enjoyed, but I do not need to go through it again.
Right. It could be cut down. I'm not sure what you would take out, but there's a few things here and there that don't need to be, and I think that would bring it under 2 hours at least. But it's a fun-ass movie. The action's great. The special effects are terrific. It makes me wish I could pilot a giant robot, and my son enjoyed the hell out of it. We watched it over 2 days. The sequences where there are not monsters and robots happening, he was completely disinterested, and he's 7 now, so he got real bored real quick because there's like a long period of time where there are no robots and no monsters, and he just like left. He's just like, I'm gonna go do something else, and I was like, well, we can finish this later.
All the character stuff is just it's not that interesting. It's not a very compelling story. It's just like, well, these characters are here, so we're gonna tell you more about them, but not because it's actually interesting story stuff. And it's not like when you flesh them out, you're like, wow, this is a character I enjoy as a character study, because they're not particularly complex or intriguing or anything either.
Right. It makes the classic monster movie mistake where it tries to make the movie about people.
Yeah.
where I don't care about the people.
Right. Well, and if you do want to make it
monsters.
about people, or if you want the people to be important, like, don't just take for granted that they are just because you tell us about them. Like, make them interesting. Like,
yeah,
but they don't. They don't. It's so obligatory. It's just like, well, we couldn't just have the whole plot be that these monsters are here. And I'm like, that's why you're bringing this movie to us, though, right?
Right.
Like, you're not bringing this movie to us because Charlie and Susie and Bob are really interesting characters. So you actually don't need to do much with them. We don't need to see their boring, non-interesting personalities just interacting with each other more.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite of like Alien, where you're like, hey man, these characters, there's the way they're being performed. You get a sense of like their context and their backstory, or just like that they got to be the way they were somehow. You see Sigourney Weaver interacting with, I think, Tom Skerritt, and you're like, oh, okay, I can tell that these people have a certain kind of respect and tension with each other.
And also with Alien, the main character keeps changing.
Like, the Alien?
No.
Or Sigourney Weaver?
Like Tom Skerritt's the original main character of that movie, and then it turns into Sigourney Weaver being the main character. And like, because that happens, it's good that we spent time getting to know these people. Whereas this movie, it's Charlie Hunnam, and Charlie Hunnam's going to save the day from the first minute of the movie. So don't waste time making me think he's going to die. You're like, I know he's not going to die. Like, there's the end sequence of the movie. Spoiler alert, is they save the day, and he pops up in the water with his partner, the female lead of the movie, Japanese actress Rinko Kikuchi, is there. And we spend like 5 minutes of her being upset that she thinks Charlie Hunnam's dead, and you're like, we know he's not dead. Stop wasting my time. Just end the movie. It's over. And then he's not dead, and then the movie ends. It's a waste.
When it does come to the action stuff, though, like if anybody's, oh yeah, I haven't seen that movie, it's been around, I just never watched it, I don't know if it's worth it or not. Truly, like, check it out when you have other things to do too, or you've got people over to watch it with you and you can just bullshit during the pointless stuff. But the action is kind of worth watching because it is so well done. Everything's moving in the way it would, so it's a lot more kinetic. It's like that Godzilla thing we were talking about, where it's like, if you can only see part of Godzilla, you get a better sense, and the right camera angles and stuff, and the movement, you get a better sense of how much weight there is behind what he's doing.
Exactly, the weight.
And you feel that with these things. And from what I understand, and I'm not going to bother watching it, but from what I understand, the second one blows that all, where they're just like, yeah, they have the things move around a lot faster, and so it's like they went for a different thing with the action to make them more like they're quick fighting, but it just takes away all that stuff. It just makes it not work, because it's like, now I feel like I'm just watching these
two people
a video game, It's, yeah.
Like, that's part of the thing that's great about this, is just the weight of these robots trying to punch a monster in the face, where it's just like, you could feel the impact. And it's executed so well, and it looks really good too. Like, I would say like half of this movie is all CGI, and it looks really great.
It's kind of like the opposite of like a John Wick thing, where you have those moments where you start to get into the rhythm of it, and you're like, oh, okay, I know, okay, punch, 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 step, punch, 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 step, punch, and you get into like where none of them count anymore. None of the punches, none of the bullets count anymore, because it's just fitting into this repetitive sequence. Here you're like, oh, here comes the punch, Kagoosh, and then you're like, wow, yeah, that one punch that took 20 seconds to deliver was, oh yeah, I feel it. Yeah, of course that building is falling down now. Look at that go. Or you know what? It's the opposite of the end of Man of Steel.
Yes. I was just going to say that. That's what I was saying to. I was like, it's the opposite of Man of Steel, where when they crash into these buildings, the buildings don't just collapse, like they fall through the building and then the building collapses or falls apart. The structural damage they cause to, I want to say, Hong Kong is insanity. Like Hong Kong is abandoned after this fight because they destroy like 10 city blocks. The other thing you were saying about John Wick is like that movie is like fight dancing, where it's very choreographed, whereas the fighting in this movie feels like a brawl, where at any moment somebody could just sneak an uppercut in there, and that usually is what happens. Someone just punches somebody in the face. and it's fun. Like they both work, but for this, if it was dancing, it wouldn't work as well.
And it is kind of based around the action. Correct me if I'm wrong here, because I don't know how I could make this up without even seeing the second one.
I've never seen it.
It was this movie, right, where like at the end they're like, by the way, I have a giant sword. And you're like, wait a minute, what? Why didn't you use that before?
That happens.
And logic, you can tell it's just based around the fun of it, because logic-wise, they'd be using that the whole time. But as an audience member, you get to be like, oh, yeah, it's on now.
Right.
And so many movies kind of have that dilemma before them, because you want that moment where there's like oh, yeah, they can finally bring this out. Yeah. But a lot of the time, it's like, well, wait, logic would say start with that. If the bad guys had a giant monster that could eat half of your army, wouldn't they just be like, hey, monster, go in and take out half of the army before we get started?
The other thing about this movie that's dumb is the main plot is that the world governments are discontinuing the Jaeger or giant robot program because they're just going to invest in a giant wall that Mexico is going to pay for. And so they're discontinuing the robots, which is why they only have like a few robots in the movie. And the robots are the only thing that has worked against the monsters. And they're like, we're canceling the monster program. We're going to go with the wall. And then there's this sequence of a monster crashing through the wall. Mm-hmm. And they're like, we still think the wall's the best way to go.
And they don't go, they know where these monsters are coming from. They're like, hey, there's this hole in the ocean. And at no point are they like, how about we set some security around that hole?
We're just going to build 10 Jaegers and just surround the hole. And then as they come out, we'll just brutalize them. And then we'll replace the broken robots with new robots.
Or like a turret or something.
Or like a laser grid. So like as the thing comes out, it slices it in half or something.
Or if they have so much faith in this wall, just be like, hey, you know what? Let's take a chunk of wall and drop it on top of that hole.
Surround the hole with the wall, yeah. The movie has a few holes. All right, that's all I got on Pacific Rim. It's a fun movie.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Next up is Kong, Skull Island from 2017. This movie was directed by Jordan Vaught Roberts. Stars Tom Hiddleston, it stars the cast of the Avengers Endgame. Tom Hiddleston, Sam Jackson, Brie Larson, John C. Reilly. John Goodman is in this somehow.
Sam Jackson's in there, right?
Yeah, I said that, I think.
Oh, sorry.
And basically, the Vietnam War has just ended, and Samuel L. Jackson's itching for another fight. So John Goodman works for the Godzilla organization, Monarch, and we're going to go to this new island that we've discovered. And when we get there, there's a great big old ape.
Okay. Before, I know I'm asking you to show your cards here a little bit, but like, I just want your initial reaction on this. How much more fun was this movie than you expected it to be?
I loved this.
Yeah. Yeah.
This movie was great.
It's like the opposite of the Pacific Rim thing. It's like they're like, hey, you know what? We know what you're here for. We're not going to waste any time on much other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They could have just dropped the Kong from it and just called it Skull Island, because King Kong's not really a big part of it. He shows up and saves the day, spoiler alert. But like for the most part, it's the story of those the skull crawler monsters. This movie's great. This movie was so much fun.
How weird would it be if you did see this movie and it wasn't called, like, if they didn't tell you King Kong's in it? You're
like
watching this
like a secret
movie.
King Kong movie? That would have been amazing.
Yeah. And then King Kong just shows up and you're like, wait, did they just rip off King Kong? They're going to throw a giant monkey in here or a giant ape in here, and then they're like, oh, it's Kong, and you're like, wait, what?
It's King Kong? Oh my God, we're on King Kong's? That would have been amazing. That would have been fantastic. Man. But again, without putting King Kong on it, nobody's going to go see this, I don't think.
Well, a secret Jurassic Park movie was the other King Kong. They just didn't tell you that the Tyrannosaurus was from Jurassic Park.
Right. But yeah, this movie was awesome. It was so much fun. Like, it's terrible. Don't get me wrong.
It's
terrible,
lots of dumb in it. But it's another one that
so
seems
fun.
kind of self-aware.
Yeah. It knows what kind of a movie it is, and it gives you the action that you want. And it's entertaining. There's a lot of death. Like when they show the 47 helicopters they have going to Skull Island, I was like, we're going to see a lot of people die. A lot of people, like, the body count in this movie is going to be so high. And it was. Like, you get to see people dying left and right. Most of them are faceless, but main characters die left and right. And you're just kind of like, awesome. This is why we needed this huge cast for some reason. This is why we needed 40 helicopters, so that we would have someone to kill every 5 minutes. And the kills are pretty entertaining, and the monsters look cool. Some of the special effects are a little janky. Like, Kong himself sometimes looks fantastic and other times looks terrible.
I don't know if I'm remembering completely right, but I saw this in the theater, and I seem to recall the effects being very solid on the big screen, but
oh yeah,
some of that kind of changes a little bit when you're watching it on television.
That's possible. When they first introduce him, at one point, King Kong's holding a helicopter above his head, and he's like screaming and we're looking down on him from inside the helicopter.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this looks bad. It maybe like on a theater screen, the depth of field works a little more. Uh-huh. But on a TV, I was like, wow, I can really tell that this is not actually happening. But other times, he looks fantastic. He looks so good.
I can tell that a helicopter's not actually being eaten by a giant ape.
Well, I mean,
I know
ape
what you
looks
mean.
really CGI. Like, yeah. It's really...
It's just
two
a funny
images.
Just a funny statement.
I think that monkey's a computer. That's when I yelled at that lady at King Kong. Remember when we saw that and I yelled at a lady?
No.
You don't remember that?
No. Please.
The ladies behind us wouldn't stop talking, and I was getting really annoyed, which was funny because you're the one who normally gets really annoyed at that. And then King Kong shows up and the lady behind us goes, I don't think that monkey's real. I think it's a computer. And I turned around and I said, lady, please be quiet. And she goes, that guy just told me to be quiet. And then I think no one said anything. And then she didn't say anything else for the rest of the movie.
Well done then.
I was like, or maybe I didn't say it. I was like, lady, can you not talk so loud? Because I lost my mind when she said, I think that monkey's a computer. But I say that line all the time. If you've never heard me say that, that's where that comes from.
Apparently,
or if you've heard me say
it, but I don't remember it.
You were really involved in the monkey or the King Kong movie that I think you had already seen, and I made you see it again.
Oh man, well, that's how you know I love you.
Because that movie's not terrible, but
if there's a whole hour
long
in that movie that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah. Effing long.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind just going back and just like watching that middle hour, be like, all right, here he is.
The dinosaurs, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's what Kong Skull Island's for, so I'll just watch that instead. Yeah. I would like to watch it again. The only thing, and I know this is just like, it just illustrates how the movie kind of does know it's stupid, but it's the image that pops into my head where I'm like, nah, I don't feel like it. And it is when Tom Hiddleston so there's a ton of poisonous gas around. Yeah. And Tom Hiddleston puts on a face mask to run in slow motion for like 5 steps. And then while still in this poisonous swamp, he's just like, I'm going to take the face mask off again. And I'm like, wait, you're going to die. And then he doesn't, and it's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Why? And why did we need that scene? Why did he even put it on in the first place? Why was it important to see him running in slow motion like something was happening? It didn't need to be there at all. Yeah. And that's all. And for some reason, that pops into my head, and it's always the thing that stops me from going back to the well. But I'm pretty sure that I will watch it again at some point, and that I'll also enjoy it.
Yeah, it was fun. And if you haven't seen it, I would say check it out. And definitely watch it over Godzilla King of the Monsters, because that movie was the worst. And this was so much fun. This is what you want when you see a monster movie. Like, it was silly, it was exciting,
short enough.
There's great big monsters. Yeah, it's under 2 hours long. It's just a shade under 2 hours, but it's under 2 hours.
Really?
Yeah, it's 158.
I would have thought it was an hour and a half.
Nah, it's not that short, but the pacing is fantastic. Stuff's constantly happening, and like the downtime moments are brief, but they're interesting. Like, you get to learn a few things. Like, you get to learn about, like, John C. Reilly's character has been there since World War II, and without doing a whole lot, just establish that him and the Japanese pilot that he was at war with in World War II, like, become friends on the island without having to oversell the whole thing.
Yeah, his character's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, he's interesting, and he's John C. Reilly, like, to a T. Like, he's just doing John C. Reilly, but like, he's great.
And he's got his John C. Reilly voice, not like that vampire assistant movie.
Yeah. Samuel L. Jackson's crazy in this movie. Tom Hiddleston's pretty good. He really doesn't have all that much to do, but he's good. Brie Larson's fine. I don't know how I feel about Brie Larson. My wife and I were talking about it last night, where I'm just like, there's just something about Brie Larson I just don't care for.
She and Tom Hiddleston both do absolutely nothing for me. I don't have anything.
Like Tom Hiddleston.
I don't have anything against them, and I can't have anything for them. I just feel nothing. They're like wax paper.
Yeah. She's good in Captain Marvel, and she's fine in this movie, but whenever I see her, I'm like, All right, I think that might be all I got for Kong Skull Island.
All right.
Next. Birds of Prey and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn from 2020.
No idea what you're about to say.
From 2020, directed by Kathy Yan, stars Margot Robbie, Rosie Perez, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Ewan McGregor, a few other people here and there. And this movie was fine. It was fine. It's not great. It's not the worst thing. It's way better than Suicide Squad. It's way better than Batman versus Superman.
Oh, God, yeah.
This movie feels like what a comic book movie would normally be if the Marvel formula didn't exist.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I can see that.
So this feels very Warner Brothers-y, very cartoonish, and the movie has a tone problem. I feel like it doesn't know what it wants to be, because a lot of the stuff that works is when Harley Quinn's just kind of crazy, but there's text on the screen explaining what she's thinking or what she's looking at and stuff. That stuff really worked for me, and they just kind of abandoned that.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, that's true.
And then the stuff with the kid is obnoxious. I feel like Harley Quinn wouldn't just murder a child to get a diamond out of his stomach, but she wouldn't become best friends with it. The Joker would have killed the kid immediately, and Harley Quinn would not have a problem with him doing that.
She wouldn't object to it.
Right. And so the fact that she's like, I'm not going to kill you right now, but I will sacrifice you to save my own skin. That was within character, but then she's real sorry about it. The movie gets real, I don't know, it gets real women-y. Towards the end where they've got feelings and stuff, and I'm like, ugh, these are not these characters. These characters all hate each other. They would not care about each other's feelings or betraying one another. And
they should be a bit more sociopathic and less actual bonding.
Yes. Exactly. Where they're trying to force this Birds of Prey group to form rather than it just being a natural thing where they just do it to survive, and then later they would come together again. And I think that's where the movie falls apart. So it's got a bit of an identity crisis. It's got a tone problem. A lot of the jokes don't land because of timing. Someone will set up a joke and then someone will say the punchline, but it'll take too long for the punchline, where I think it should be a lot faster.
Yeah, it could land more if it was just edited a bit differently.
Yeah, and this movie's too long. I know it's only an hour 49, but it could be much shorter. There's a lot that could be removed to pick up the pace or whatever. But I agree with you. Margot Robbie is the best part of this movie. She's terrific. I liked her quite a bit. And
did you like the moment when she said, "You killed my sandwich"?
Not really.
Ah, damn you.
I liked the whole sequence of her getting the sandwich, though. I wanted that sandwich so bad while I was watching it.
I did not. While she was doing that, I was like, oh, just shut up. I don't need this forced character stuff. But then when she was like, "You killed my sandwich," I was like, oh, you know what? Now I'm believing she really wanted that sandwich. That wasn't just someone being dramatic.
Oh, yeah. That whole time she's watching that dude make the sandwich, I was like, I want this sandwich. She sold me on this sandwich.
That's this director's strength is they should be doing food commercials.
Also, where's the Batman? I mean, this movie takes place in Gotham City, and there are so many crimes happening, so much, and Batman never shows up, and no one is afraid that Batman's going to show up.
Not at all. I said something to Karina at some point. I was like, I guess they know Batman's on vacation right now or something.
There's a shootout somewhere and the Batman doesn't show up. There's a thing somewhere else and Batman doesn't show up. And no one I wanted someone to just say, "Where's the goddamn Batman?" while all this is happening, and no one addresses it. And they do reference him twice, I think.
Oh yeah, back then I had a run-in with Batman or something.
Yeah. I think Harley Quinn mentions and Batman punched me in the face or something like that.
And then someone else is like, which one?
The shadow of Batman should
George
be,
Clooney.
Yeah. The shadow of Batman should be all over this movie. I don't have a problem that he's not in it, but everyone should be afraid that he's going to show up at any moment.
There should be some sort of presence. It's weird that his presence isn't felt at all. I mean, there's nothing even that's like, there's just nothing to say that his fingerprint is even there. You know, there's nothing like that says like Wayne Enterprises or...
Yeah, she names the hyena Bruce after Bruce Wayne.
That's true.
She like says after that hunky Wayne guy. But if there was no mention of him at all, you would just be like, oh, are we in a totally different city?
Is this Joker? Oh, wait, no, Batman is in that, though, because they're
Batman's
like,
in that movie,
Bruce Wayne's all over that. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
I completely removed my comment there.
And then there's like this other moment when Harley Quinn's driving down a highway and they're throwing dynamite at other cars.
Yeah.
And they pass this street sign. Now, this is like nerdy. This is like me being nerdy or like wanting an Easter egg or whatever. But they pass like a sign that says Financial District. But what I wanted it to say was like Bloodhaven. Like, turn here to get to Bloodhaven. And then you could be like, oh, okay, that's why there's no Batman, because we're not really in Gotham. We're in Camden, and that's why Batman's not around. Maybe Nightwing's going to show up. You know, just take the story out of Gotham. If you're not going to have him, just have her leave town.
I mean, there are no superheroes. There are supervillains.
Yeah.
But there are no superheroes in this world.
Yeah, exactly. Like no one references Superman or Wonder Woman, and I feel like that's a big miss. Like they should be afraid that the Justice League is going to show up and shut them down. And then when they don't, they're just like, well, we lucked out here.
Yeah. So just even there was a sense that it's much, much more underground, but they're just like very much like out there walking the streets, daylight, you know, like just like, yeah, we're all here. Why wouldn't we walk around like we own the place? I don't know if I would need it to be like they're mentioning them all the time, but some sort of sense of, hey, this is all happening hidden. Because it just wouldn't be happening this way. Because if they were walking around like that, you'd be like, oh, there, Harley Quinn is getting a... Oh, Batman punched her. He saw that she was walking around on the street and he stopped her.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think those are things that would have helped the movie, but you can tell like this movie was made for contractual reasons, and Affleck had already left the franchise. Robert Pattinson had not yet signed on as Batman, and they're not going to reveal him in this movie, so they're just trying to avoid everything. And they even go so far as to avoid what the Joker looks like in Suicide Squad, like the Jared Leto Joker.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
I think they don't know where they're going with it.
Yeah.
Like they show him at one point, but from behind. Yeah. And you don't see anything. And then the picture she has of him, he doesn't have any of the tattoos on his face or anything. And I think they're just really unsure of where they wanted to go with this movie. And that indecision really shows. When you're trying to build like a shared world, oh, that guy was a waste. I just could not get it seemed like every time Ewan McGregor was on scene, he was a different character. I thought he was fine, and the crazier he got, the more I liked him, up until the weird sexual assault scene in the club where he forces that guy to take that girl's clothes off because she was laughing.
He suddenly goes from supervillain to like just really bad, sick person. Like there's nothing super or like unusual about it. It's just like, oh, now you're just like a true crime guy. This is something that I'm hearing a terrible story about some guy who is really sick once upon a time. And it's like, you're not in a comic book movie anymore. And I'm like, go ahead, be evil, do really evil stuff, be menacing. I want to feel that because you're supposed to be a menacing character, but do it in a way that is a comic book way rather than suddenly being, we just went from Batman Forever to Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, totally agree. And they don't establish why he wears the black mask at all.
For the second that he does.
Yeah. And the one scene I really liked is when Black Canary shows up to like be his driver, and he starts taking her on a tour of all the masks he has. And he's so excited to talk about them. And he's just like, oh, and this mask does this, and this mask is for that. And she's like interested, and Mr. Zaz, who I feel like they also ruined or didn't use very well, is so sick of hearing about the masks. I like that scene a lot. Also, Mr. Zaz, not enough scars. He didn't have enough scars.
No, I agree.
Like on his chest, he had a bunch, but Mr. Zaz should be like head to toe in scars.
Yeah, prominent.
And especially if they're going to kill him off. Like, I don't think no one's ever dead in a comic book, but if you're going to kill off Mr. Zsasz, that means he's late career Zsasz, which means he's covered in scars, like at least down to his fingers, you know, like.
Yeah.
Mr. Zsasz is like one of the first Batman villains I ever read in a Batman comic, like during the Nightfall storyline.
Yeah.
So he's got a real special place in my heart because he's so crazy. he's so dark.
Prolific. I mean, he's got, I think there's the Joker who's really scary just because he's so completely unpredictable. And then there's Bane who it's like he's really methodical. And then Zsasz is just like, I am obsessed with killing people. It's not as impulsive and unpredictable as Joker. It's more like, oh, if he sees you, he's going to kill you.
And he loves it.
Yeah.
Like it's his favorite.
And there's sort of an element of that in this movie, but it's strange. It doesn't, there's nobody who's actually menacing except for that one moment, and it's really weird and doesn't actually fit. So,
I did like when Harley Quinn kept hitting him with that tranquilizer dart after the Montoya shows up and says stop, and she just keeps stabbing him with the tranquilizer dart. I was like, that's pretty good. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Margot Robbie is the best part of this movie. I hope she comes back in the role because I think she deserves another shot in a better movie.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it would be good to see her get to do this character with a little better material.
If you are on the fence about seeing Birds of Prey, it's worth checking out. It's not super great, but it's not bad.
Yeah, set your sights at like a C.
I think you'll leave satisfied. I left satisfied. I was like, oh, that was fine. And then like I had the complaints that I've talked about. All right, on to the final movie that I saw this week. The Hunt from 2020. Matt, you also watched that this week?
Sure did.
And this was directed by Craig Zobel. It stars a lot of people, most notably Hilary Swank is in it, which I didn't know. Ethan Suplee is in it. He's the brother from My Name is Earl. And I thought this was fine.
I enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, I liked it.
I thought it was fun. I know it was, I'm going to say it's not actually a controversial movie. There just happened to be controversy around it because it picks at like tropes and exaggerates stuff. Well, hopefully it should be exaggerations of, extremely conservative people, extremely liberal people, or let's say rather people caught up in the whole sidesiness of things. But the movie itself, I'm like, this movie's it's not making any controversial statements. It's just picking at everybody.
Nah.
And it's doing a pretty good job of it.
The political stuff in this movie is the worst part of it. It feels so forced. And my wife and I were talking about it after we finished it. And I said to Jill, this movie feels like the idea of this movie is let's make a movie for conservatives made by liberals, but liberals who are making a movie for conservatives the way conservatives would want a movie made by liberals. Like, it's that on the nose with everything where... so the plot of this movie is hardcore conservative people are being hunted down by hardcore liberal people because the conservatives think that that's what they do. So that's the plot. And it works. But except that the political stuff is just so heavy-handed that it doesn't. It like kind of detracts from everything.
I didn't really have a problem with it as much, but I will say like one of my notes in here is just that it's like every line. It is heavy-handed. I don't mind that it's as extreme as it is because I think it's meant to be kind of, satirical, but it's too much. Like you can kind of feel the writers going like, okay, well, if the person is going to be if they're going to be saying something, if they have a line, every line has to be some sort of extreme line, except for the very main character who they kind of keep as sort of neutral. They kind of find ways to like have their cake and eat it too with her, where they're like, we're not really going to actually put her on either side. The closest she's going to come to really, because it wants you to think of her as being one of the really conservative people, but the closest they come to actually committing to that is that like she calls someone a snowflake early on in the movie, and the rest of it, it's like, nope, she's just pissed. She's just angry and she's trying to survive. So she's sort of the wise person in the whole movie, which sort of works in terms of being able to be on her side and go like, okay, you know what? I don't really care what she is. I want her to get through it. And I like that she doesn't like anybody because I don't like anybody.
Yeah, she doesn't trust anybody. It's great.
She works. But she's a pretty good actor. I've never seen her in anything before, but I thought she did a pretty good job. Performance.
Yeah, apparently like the frowny face that she has all the time is just her regular face. She's constantly frowning, and she's on that show Glow that my wife watches, that Netflix, that ladies wrestling show Glow. And my wife says that she looks like that in the show too, like she just has like a downturned kind of a mouth. But I thought she's great in this movie. I also like the beginning of the movie. Your main character changes like 40 times before we settle in. Like you never get comfortable with your main character until like the halfway through the second act of the movie. Mm-hmm. Your protagonist just keeps shifting left and right. I think that's how the movie like really locked me in, is I was like, oh, well, she's dead. Oh, I guess this guy's our main. Oh, no, he's dead. Oh, this guy's dead. I was like, oh man, this is great.
Probably the first 15 minutes of the movie is just a bunch of people dying.
Yeah. Crazy violent, too. Like, the violence is fantastic. The gore is fantastic. A few digital blood splatters that look terrible. But for the most part, this was great. This was a lot of fun. It's like an hour and a half long. And I thought it was so much fun.
Yeah, I guess we're talking about pacing in a way when it comes to, like, switching characters and who you're following and how that plays out. I'd say... not that the movie gets less enjoyable. I actually kind of enjoyed it more as it went on, but I found that the first, 20 minutes or so, I found the introduction really interesting. Like I was pretty like, I'm having fun here and I'm interested to see what actually is going on, who I'm actually following, kind of just like, what's the deal here? It was a pretty good ride. Who made this? Was this a Blumhouse movie?
This was a Blumhouse movie, yeah.
Okay. This is what Fantasy Island wishes it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I also like that this movie it's pretty even-handed with its over dramatizing of conservative or liberal talking points.
Yeah.
Where like the conservative guys are crazy conspiracy people, and then the liberal people are overly like too liberal, where you're just like, oh my God, shut up. So like it's just the total extreme of both sides of it.
Yeah.
I like that the only good guy in this movie is the main character, who's just a regular person.
Yeah.
And the only way that like you can be sure that, I guess she's there on accident because Hilary Swank makes a mistake. And the only way you know that is because she read Animal Farm. Like she knows the plot to Animal Farm. And I'm like, I've never read Animal Farm. Is that something most people have read? And I'm like, I know it's a famous book, but like, is that something most people have read if you're learned?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's one of those books that there's like a handful of books that schools require, and every now and again there'll be one that's kind of dropped off here and there where you're like, oh yeah, I never read Great Expectations. But Animal Farm is one of those. I never read it. I saw the movie as a kid and I thought it was good, and that was at school, but we never actually did read it. We didn't do a particularly good job of talking about the movie either. We just watched it. But I think a lot of places, a lot of people do read it. It's a pretty high idea, critical look at like political philosophy and stuff. So I could see where it's a pretty good representation, especially with her actually hanging on to what the characters are and what they symbolize, that it would sort of speak to this Hilary Swank character where she would go like, I did not expect that. I didn't think you'd even know who Snowball was.
Yeah.
Shit.
I mean, I know what Animal Farm is, and I just think it was like kind of a cheap way to show that she's educated and not like internet loser. But I didn't care. It's fine. This was a fun movie. A lot of good killing and entertaining.
Yeah, I actually I don't know why. You know what? Okay, so I have a completely irrational, completely unearned, not her fault dislike of Hilary Swank.
Oh, really?
I irrationally can't stand her. And I believe, and this may be to her credit, honestly, I believe it probably comes from how much I wanted her dead in $1 Million Baby. Like, I hated that movie. And
really?
Yeah, I hated it. And at the end, I'm like, oh, good, she's dead. Good. Can we leave now? Are we done? Like, I don't care. I don't care at all. And the fact that it's the movie I have the problem with, but that it carried over to her probably says she did a really good job. And I do think she's a good actor. I think, what was it that we saw that was super depressing? Boys Don't Cry.
Uh-huh.
You know, she did a really good job in that. And I can't say I've seen her in much else because I've avoided her like the plague. Like, I know she was in that movie, The Core. Now, I've heard that there are lots of reasons not to watch The Core, but I had one reason not to watch The Core, and it was enough. And I was like, screw it, Hillary Swankson. I'm not messing with it.
I've never seen it either, but all the reasons not to watch it are the reasons I want to see it.
Well, so when she popped up, I was like, oh man, I think at some point in time, I think I knew Hillary Swank was in this. Why did I watch this? And then I was like, oh, you know what? She's fine. I'm digging it. She's good. It's cool. So I'm not going to go back and watch the whole library of Hillary Swank movies, but I can from here say, yeah, that wasn't fair. I wasn't being very nice to Hillary Swank. But I'll tell you what, though. She looks younger now than she did when I saw her in $1 Million Baby, 15 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
She looked like she was like 25.
I think my wife said that she has perpetually looked 50 years old. Like, even in that Karate Kid movie.
Wait, we're going in two different directions here. So Jill thought she always looked old.
Yeah, and I agreed. I was like, yeah, she has always looked old.
Huh, because I thought she looked young in this.
Oh, no, she looks fantastic in this, but I think it's because her body finally caught up to her face.
Huh.
like she's finally the age she's supposed to be.
I got nothing more on that. I was like, wow, Hillary Swank, I have avoided you for however long, at least over a decade. And
she's quite good now. She's in a bunch of good stuff that I can't think of anything of right now.
So overall, I would recommend The Hunt.
I, too.
And I think that if it offends you, you probably are a little bit too far in your own.
Yeah.
Your head's
too far. If it offends you, you've missed the point.
Yeah, well, and it might even be like a bit of a wake up call that like you're not really on any principles anymore. You're just caught up in some sidesiness.
Yeah,
because I mean, with all the controversy around it, you would have thought that this movie like was actually really unfair to some group of people. Yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that. Unfair. I'm like, this movie's just picking on the worst of people.
Yeah.
Or the worst in people.
On all sides of people. I feel like this controversy was stirred up by the marketing team in order to like make people want to see it.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess it backfired if that's the case, because instead of being released in the theater, well, I guess it was released in the theater though.
And then the world turned off.
Yeah, and then we shut down. I don't know how many people saw it in the theater. Do you know if it was a success?
I do not, but I mean,
I'm sure it was on a Blumhouse
It's
budget.
A Blumhouse level. Yeah, exactly. So as far as a financial success, yes, I think it was a financial success. But did it make $100 million? I don't think so. Right. But if it only cost $10 million to make and it made 60, then of course. I looked it up because you talked about The Purge the other week.
Yeah.
And that movie was made for, I think, $10 million. And it made like 150 worldwide, which is...
Well, and that's why that's 7 of it.
Exactly. All right, Matt, it's time for that moment on the show where we do our movie rankings list.
Yippee.
You'll be excited to hear that I have created an algorithm formula within the Google Sheets program that will do all of the math in real time for us.
Oh.
The technology has progressed to the point where we can have real-time math.
I mean, this whole time we've also had the ability to edit. We could have just done the math and edited it out and had answers right then. But, okay, well, good job.
Finally, science has caught up to fiction.
All right, cool.
So I've got your list open first.
Perfect.
And for Black Death, I think you're going to give this movie an overall of 3.
Okay, let's find out. Story. Simple, well put together. I think this is going to be, in a lot of cases, how things get a 4 when it's perfect for what it is, but it's not anything particularly amazing. So I'm going to give it a 4 on story.
Wow, okay.
Acting, The acting's actually really good. I don't know what to make of Eddie Redmayne because I feel like half the time I like him and half the time I can't stand him. So I don't know if he's just one of those really inconsistent actors or if he just takes risks, kind of runs with things and goes, okay, people might like this, people might not. We'll see. He's perfectly fine in this movie. I give the acting a 4. It's kind of similar. It's really good for what it is. It's not particularly meant to be amazing. Pacing. Short movie, steady build up. I'm going to give the pacing a 4. Aesthetics. Nothing special. Gritty. Okay. Oh, you know what? Actually, I forgot about this. There is a lot of handheld camera work in this, and it is actually a bit annoying sometimes. I'm not saying it's ineffective. There are probably scenes where it adds something to the tension that's good, but there are other times where I'm like, this does not need to be giving me a headache right now. So aesthetics, I'm going to give it a 2.5. And enjoyment overall, I think we're in a 3.5 zone here. Definitely no lower, probably not high enough for a 4. So 3.5, yeah.
Well, according to the math, you gave that movie a 3.6.
Okay.
Which is going to put it right now in your number 6 spot between Green Book and I, Tonya. But that might change depending on your other 2 movies.
Is Green Book above I, Tonya?
Yes.
That surprises me. Okay, next up, Wildling.
I think you're going to give this movie a 3 as well.
That sounds right. Story, simple, pretty straightforward. Well, straightforward. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but yeah. I can't spoil anything here. I'm just going to say the story is a 3. Performances, acting, this is a couple of funky lines here from Liv Tyler at points. 3. I almost gave it an extra half, but no. We're going with 3. Pacing, 3.5. Yeah. It's definitely a movie that you're like, I do have a couple questions, but I don't want it to be longer. Aesthetics, nothing special, nothing bad. Gets a 3. An enjoyment. I gotta say, I was intrigued the whole time. This falls into a certain section of horror that it's kind of thinky horror. It's not quite as what do they call that? Elevated horror. It's as Hereditary or something. So enjoyment. I'm gonna go 3.5 on that.
And the computer has stopped its measurement. It looks like you're gonna give that a 3.2.
All right. It stopped its measurement. Do you watch it compute? Is it
Yeah, the fan slows down to a... Exactly. Yeah. The sound is off right now, but that's what it goes beep, boop, boop. Looks like it's in the range of better than Birds of Prey.
Okay, yeah.
I have to place it, and I'm not doing that right now. So,
all right.
The Hunt. I think you're going to give this movie a 3.5.
Okay. Story. I will give the story a 3. The acting's good. Some of the characters are annoying and stuff, but it's not because of the performance. I'm going to go ahead and give the acting a 4. And the pacing. This is a pretty well-paced movie. I'm going to give it a 4. Aesthetics. I did not even notice them, really. It was fine. It was serviceable. Aesthetics get a 3.5. And enjoyment, I had a good time. I am glad it wasn't longer. It was right in the sweet spot. So I'm going to give the enjoyment a 4.
Yeah, when it ends, you're just kind of like, oh, good, it's over because I was done with this.
Right.
It knows exactly when to get out. It looks like your overall is a 3.7 for The Hunt.
Okay.
All right, on to my list. Matt, what do you think I'm going to give King Arthur, Legend of the Sword?
3.
Plot for this movie is pretty stupid. I'm going to give it a 2. Acting was pretty good. I'm going to give it a 3.5. Pacing, the movie lags a lot. It could be a lot quicker, so I'm going to give it a 2. Aesthetic, it looks great. 3.5. I like the way it was shot, and the Guy Ritchie stuff, the real Guy Ritchie stuff, looks fantastic, and you wish you had so much more of that. And then enjoyment of this movie, I'm going to give it a 2.5. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It's very middle of the road. So that comes out to be about a 2.7 for me. What do you think I'm going to give Bloodshot?
I think you're going to give Bloodshot a 2.
Plot, a 1. Actually, I'm going to give it a 1.5 because it's an interesting plot. It's just executed poorly. The acting is terrible. It gets a 1. The pacing, I'm going to say 1.5. It does kind of move along, but it does take forever. Aesthetic, for the most part, it looks pretty good. Some parts look better than others. It's shot competently.
There's definitely a scene that was in the preview for that where I was like, why is this in the preview? This looks terrible.
Yeah, there's
where
plenty
they're,
of that,
falling
too.
down an elevator shaft or something.
Yeah, that whole sequence is kind of weird, but it goes on for forever, so you're like, oh, okay. So aesthetic, I'm going to give it a 3. And then enjoyment, I'm going to give it a 2.5. I would watch this again, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I think I would watch it again.
Did you hear yourself talk about it?
I know, isn't that stupid?
Why did you watch it? What's the appeal?
It was stupid fun. But like you said, I think I'd rather watch Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, God, yeah.
if it was on TV and there was nothing to watch, I'd be like, oh, cool, Bloodshot. All right, Matt, what do you think I'm going to give The Hunt?
I think you're going to give it a 3.5.
Plot of this movie is pretty basic. It's nothing complicated. Couple twists and turns. I'm going to give it a 3. The acting is fine, if over the top, but that's what the characters are supposed to be, as you were saying. I think I'm going to go with a 3. Pacing, the movie flies. It does a great job of keeping you interested and moving on from set piece to set piece. I'm going to give it a 4.5 for pacing. Aesthetic, doesn't look special. It's kind of generic looking and bland and flat, but it gets the job done. But I'm going to give it a 2.5 for the aesthetic. But enjoyment of this movie, I'm going to give it a 4.5. I loved it. I had a blast. So that comes out to be a 3.5.
All right.
You're spot on. Now, Spy, which is a movie I also watched. I think I talked about it.
I think you're going to give Spy a 2. Yeah, 2.
Plot for this movie, it does have one, so I'm going to give it a 2.5. The acting is okay. It's a lot of improv, so it's like people changed their characters from like scene to scene, so I'm going to give it a 2. Pacing is a 1. It's way too long and brutal. There's like one sequence when Melissa McCarthy's in a helicopter and her British friend is in another helicopter, and they're just talking to each other across the way while they're in the air, like talking out the window to each other. And I'm like, you can't even talk to someone on a helicopter in a helicopter. You have to have like those headsets on.
Yeah, yeah.
Aesthetic, movie looks pretty good. It's directed by Paul Feig and he knows what he's doing. So it looks pretty good. I would give it a 3.5. But enjoyment of this movie, I'm going to give it a 1.5. I just did not have a good time watching it. And that score comes out to be a 2.1. It's higher than I thought it would be. Birds of Prey. What do you think I'm going to give that?
I think you're going to give that one a... Oh, man, I'm back and forth between 2.5 and 3. I'm going to go with 2.5.
Plot is pretty good. It's an interesting story, and I was interested in seeing where it went up into but I was never surprised by it. It just is pretty by the numbers kind of a story. So I'm going to give it a 2.5 for story. The acting, for the most part, is pretty good. Margot Robbie's fantastic. Most of the people are fantastic. I didn't have as big a problem with the kid as you did, but she is annoying. Like, she doesn't need to be in this movie. I would give the acting a 3.5. I did like it. Pacing, I'm going to give it a 2.5. It does lag here and there. Could be a lot tighter. The aesthetic, I agree with you that it is like a lot of colors and it's a lot of very distracting, but I enjoyed that of it. I liked how colorful it was, and I liked the contrasting colors, and I liked the way most of it was shot with the text on the screen and like from Harley Quinn's point of view and stuff like that. I just wish it had been able to decide what it wanted to be a little bit more. You can feel a lot of studio interference in the final product of this movie, and I think it really shows. But for aesthetic, I'm going to give it a 3.5. I really enjoyed the way that it looked. And then enjoyment, I'm going to give it a 3. I had fun. And that averages out to be a score of 3.
That's
pretty good.
Given it a 3.
The Gentleman.
I think you're going to give that a 4.
The plot for this is not super complex or anything like that. It's an average kind of a plot. It's just executed, like I said, extremely well. So I'm going to give the plot a 3. The acting gets a 4. McConaughey's fantastic. He's not really doing much, but he doesn't have to. And then Colin Farrell's great. Colin Farrell is who I would wish I would be if I was in this situation, where when you see it, you'll understand. You'll be like, yeah, I kind of wish I was that guy. You want to be that guy going to talk to a crime boss. Pacing, movie flies. 4.5 for pacing. And aesthetic, the movie gets a 4.5. It looks fantastic. And it's great. And then enjoyment, I am going to give it a 4.5. I loved this. I loved it. And it gets a final score of 4.1. I thought it would be higher. Kong, Skull Island. God, I watch so many movies.
I feel like it's going to get a 3.5. I'm not very confident about that half, but I'm going to go with it.
All right. So plot for this movie, it's a monster movie, but it's interesting. Like there are a few elements that are surprising here and there. So I'm going to give the plot a 3. Pretty decent plot. The acting is fine. John Goodman's really mailing it in. I keep forgetting that he was even in this movie. And then, like, you could tell he's like, I don't want to be in this movie anymore. So then the monster eats him. So I would give the acting I'd give it a 3. The monkey does a great job. Pacing, it could move a little faster, but overall, it's pretty good. 3. The aesthetic movie looks great, aside from a few janky special effects here and there, but I would give the aesthetic a 3.5. I liked it. And then enjoyment of the movie, this was a blast. This is what I want every monster movie I watch to. When I'm done watching it, I want to feel like this, where I'm like, oh, that was a lot of fun. So I'm going to give it a 4. And my score for that comes out to be a 3.3. Yeah. Finally, Pacific Rim.
Let's see, because the pacing is going to be a problem. I am going to say you give Pacific Rim a 3.
Plot for Pacific Rim it's pretty dumb. It's monsters versus robots, but they set it up real quick what's going on. They give you backstory, and then they provide you with 2 hours of entertainment. So I'm going to give it a 3. The acting is terrible in this. It's not very good, but it's like we were saying earlier, it's fun and it fits in its environment. So I'm going to give it a 3. Pacing, it could be a lot tighter. I'm going to give it a 2 for pacing. The aesthetic, it looks fantastic. It really feels like you're in a post-apocalyptic future, and the special effects look fantastic, and the set design is great. The special effects are great. Music, sound, all are great. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 for aesthetic. It looks fantastic. It's a Guillermo del Toro movie where it looks fantastic, but the story's not very good. And then enjoyment of this movie, I'm going to give it a 4. It's pretty entertaining. I love this movie. My total score for that is a 3.3. If you would like to see our list to find out where everything stands, check it out. Go to thisweekinfilm.com. You'll find a link to our Letterboxd page and enjoy. Also, the This Week in Film website is fixed. It's working again, so enjoy. You'll find anything you want to know about the show there. If you have a question that is not on the website and you'd like to get in touch with us, or to just tell us what you saw in movies this week, send us an email at thisweekinfilmpodcast@gmail.com, or contact us on any of the social networks, which conveniently you can find links to on the website, thisweekinfilm.com.
That it works.
Now that it works. Matt, anything for Midwest Matt recommends this week?
You know, I just really have been watching movies in the free time, so you already heard everything I have to say about stuff this week.
Okay, well, I guess if that is the end of the reel, we'll see you next week in film.
And remember, as always, judge movies, not people.
King Kong's got a lot of scars on his face.
I thought you were going to say King Kong's got a huge dick.